Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto unlocked a Dojutsu stronger than the Sharingan? Chapter 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The most desired genetic trait of any shinobi clan. If your clan has a bloodline limit, then your status immediately skyrockets in the eyes of all those around you. You are imperial, majestic, wanted. To have one of these beautiful and powerful abilities means that you are better than the rest, that your ancestors were better than the rest, and that your descendants will always be better than the rest. It is a symbol of might, of importance. The odd thing is that it's only a mutation created by unstable DNA. Bloodline limits are nothing more than that, a freak accident that happened amongst genes. The only difference between them and a genetic illness is that the Kekkei Genkai are, well, accepted. All in all, having one did make you important, but it also labeled you as a freak. Some may agree, while others may violently oppose that concept. But that is neither here nor there at the moment. There are more important things that need to be discussed. Now, we must come to a point in time when things are about to become complicated, change that will have ramifications beyond anything you could possibly imagine, events that will warp the very structure and prestige that Kekkei Genkai are based on. In other words, the world is about to fall into chaos. For you, gentle readers, are about to see the creation of a brand new Kekkei Genkai, never once shown to the world before. It is probably the greatest and subtlest of bloodline limits, one that will change how the world will be viewed from then on. Too bad it's also going to appear in the worst person possible. Naruto Uzumaki was just a normal young boy. He had his teenage crushes, Sakura-chan. Ramen was his favorite food, and he enjoyed taking care of the small garden on his apartment's windowsill. However, things begin to take a turn for the absurd when the rest of his life is brought to light. He was a genin, the lowest rank of ninja. Currently, he was also fighting for his life against a rather gender-confused individual, and for the life of him couldn't figure out if Haku was actually a boy or a girl. Not that he knew this, as the person was currently wearing a mask to hide her identity. To add to that, he was also the human container, a Jinchuriki, of the dreaded and feared Kyuubi no Kitsune, a terrible chakra construct that nearly destroyed his hometown of Konoha when he had just been born. Because of this, Naruto had spent the majority of his life hated for a crime he did not commit nor did he have any knowledge of until just recently. Coincidentally, the person that sealed Kyuubi inside of Naruto was his late father, Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage and previous leader of Konoha. It must also be mentioned that his rival and perhaps friend Sasuke, the last of Konoha's prestigious Uchiha clan and owner of the heavily desired Sharingan, was just killed by the previously mentioned gender-confused individual. And that Naruto, in reaction to this, has tapped into Kyuubi's endless yet highly aggressive, corrupted, and demonic storage of chakra, turning him into a feral beast. Now we must step back for a moment and look at this scene. Naruto repels Haku's Senbon. Naruto breaks Haku's Makyu Hyusho. Naruto smashes Haku in the face, cracking the foe hunter Nin's mask like a cheap nut. At this point it becomes obvious that things are taking a turn for the better. However, it is also at this point that things will irrevocably begin to change. Having two extremely powerful bloodlines running through him from his mother and father, having not one, but two Kekkei Genkai activated around him in resonation, one for the very first time, and then having Kyuubi's chakra flood into him like water from a high-pressure hose, it's surprising the upcoming result didn't happen before. Then again, a little luck never hurt. Naruto panted as he stared at Haku, running the words that the boy, or was it girl, had said through his head. The story of pain, of hatred, of fear. He could understand the loneliness that Haku felt, the sheer emotions that ran between them. They were the same. He was unwanted because of his association with Kyuubi. Haku was hated because of the bloodline in his veins. And yet neither of them have had asked for such a burden, it was simply forced upon them. Zabuza had given her a reason to live. Haku could be the missing Mist Nin's tool. Being Hokage had given Naruto a reason to live. He could prove to those around him that he wasn't useless. They would live for their dreams and they would die for their dreams. Naruto could understand this. He just didn't want to. Could he kill her, really? He jerked a kunai from his pouch, blinking as a sudden itching overcame his eyes. Was it from anger over Sasuke's death, the tears he refused to shed or even produce, or simply a byproduct of Kyuubi's minor emergence into the world? Slowly, something began to stir in his genes. Is this the only way? He asked, half pleading, half frustrated. Haku stared directly at him, never wavering from looking into his eyes. He smiled proudly, sadly. Yes. Grimacing, Naruto closed his eyes, clenching his kunai tightly, so tightly his knuckles popped from the stress. His eyes were beginning to burn. Snapping them open, his mouth set into a firm, tight line. What more could he do? A flash, and a thin line of silver began to wrap around his pupils, cutting through his irises like a knife through the sea. Please, fulfill your dreams. Naruto glanced around, catching Sasuke's body out of the corner of his eye. A dream. What was the point of this dream? If it meant killing so cruelly, sealing off your own heart, was it worth it? The line connected with its ends, forming a ring of silver that shined and twinkled like a faraway star. He dashed forward, waiting, hoping that was about to happen would not. Coming closer with each step, a dream about to be tainted by blood, he raised his arm, his eyes about to close to block out the killing strike. And then the ring began its rotation. Naruto stopped, digging his heels into the ground. His arm fell down, away from the stab he was about to perform. Haku watched in shock as the action that would end his life did not come. Naruto simply dropped his jaw, pointing at the ninja. His eyes were wide, an almost imperceptible shine emanating from them. What the hell is that? Ribbons of light erupted from Haku, showering her with various streams of colors. They wrapped themselves around her body, clinging like clothes, falling off at random intervals, dancing on some non-existent wind. Blotches of light appeared and disappeared, closing around her head then speeding off to parts unknown. Blue was the main color, interspersed with purple, indigo, white, and even pink. They twirled around him, seeking something, originating from nothing, and spiraling down everywhere. It was a beautiful show, and yet Naruto couldn't help but feel some measure of sadness from the experience. He was most troubled by the ribbon's sudden appearance. Was it some kind of jutsu meant to bewilder him? Hadn't Haku already resigned to her fate? Haku looked at Naruto, confused by his amazed stare. He looked at himself subtly. There was nothing on him as far as he could tell. So what was? Her eyes widened. She glanced at the younger boy. Sorry, Naruto-kun, she hissed, her hand forming a myriad of seals. But I can't die yet. What are you? For some reason, not known to even himself, Naruto lashed out with the hand not holding the kunai. He latched onto Haku's arm, breaking her from her attempt to shunshin away. He looked, startled, at Naruto. A flare of differing colors cascaded down Haku's body. Naruto breathed heavily, his eyes burning, the view in front of him rapidly switching color and form. What the hell was going on? Haku's eyes narrowed and she wrenched her arm from Naruto's hold. Let go. Zabuza-san. A soft, deep, and strangled cry broke his sentence. Even though it was low, almost impossible to hear, their adrenaline-enhanced senses easily caught it. The fog slowly began to disperse, leaving the group to see what had happened. Haku fell to his knees. The ribbons around her body were cycling through colors even faster than before, but they were quickly beginning to settle on a deep, dark indigo. Naruto hardly caught this, as his eyes were stuck on the scene before him. Kakashi had his arm extended, one hand lodged in Zabuza's chest where his heart would be. The class a missing nin was clutching the copy nin's arm with both his hands, blood bubbling out of his mouth. Though Naruto and Haku couldn't hear what the two were saying, it was obvious that it was something important by their expressions. Kakashi hesitated before nodding slowly, retracting his hand from Zabuza's chest. The man fell down into a lifeless heap, his kubikiri haucho clanging on the stone floor after him. Zabuza-san. Tears slowly slid down the teenager's face as the most important person in his life refused to move from the place he had fallen. Kakashi grabbed his arm and quickly limped his way over to where the other two were. He still had his Sharingan revealed, which could only mean one thing: he wasn't finished fighting. From his point of view, Naruto could see it, the same thing he had seen on Haku. Ribbons and splotches of light and colors revolving around Kakashi. Red, indigo, blue, the same colors as Haku but with slight variations. Once again, without thinking, without considering the consequences, he stepped out in front of Haku, blocking him from Kakashi. The Junin sensei frowned as his student refused to budge. Naruto, what are you? No, Kakashi sensei. Naruto interrupted. You can't kill him. Kakashi frowned. Naruto, move out of the way. No, let him do it. Let him kill me. Naruto craned his neck to watch as Haku continued to stare at the ground, tears freely flowing down her cheeks. Now that Zabuza-san is no longer here, I have lost my meaning. A tool without its master is worthless. I have no reason to live. That's not true. You, Naruto. You're alive. Hearing his name called, and recognizing the voice, Naruto could feel his heart clench as though it had been squeezed by a clamp. Sakura. She was rushing over along with Tazuna, and he could see the colors flowing over her. Orange, purple, and yellow, matched with a lighter version for Tazuna. Sakura. What is it? She questioned. She saw that he refused to meet her eyes. What's wrong? What about Sasuke? Silence was her only answer. Where's Sasuke? And yet, he still refused to say a word. Fear gripped her. No, there's no need to worry. Sakura turned to Haku, as well as the others. A small twitch slightly turned up one corner of his lips. He's alive. Wah, he's alive. Sakura's eyes widened with disbelief. Did that mean that? Tazuna noticed this and gently increased his hold on her hand. Sakura turned to look at him. He smiled gently. I'll go with you. Then you won't be disobeying orders, right? Sakura looked at him, sniffed once, and nodded. Rushing, she dragged the elderly man behind her. Kakashi looked at Haku, who still refused to take her gaze from the ground. The boy was still crying, and it seemed like he would not stop anytime soon. But at least she wasn't bawling in any unseemly manner. While Kakashi all too easily understood the pain of watching a precious person die, Haku was still keeping his dignity. No sniffling, no hiccups, just a thin, steady trail of tears that flowed down her cheeks. Kakashi's eyes crinkled, though whether it was in some sort of grim amusement or something darker even he could not tell. He then frowned, turning his neck around. We have company. Naruto whipped his head up, looking. His eyes widened when he saw who had arrived. A huge number of mercenaries, numbering at least 50, had gathered on the bridge, cutting off escape from one end. In front of them all was a short, stout man, dressed in a black business suit. His eyes were hidden from view by a small pair of heavily tinted glasses, his hands balanced on a simple walking stick. The man's face was a mix of sickening pleasure and sadistic glee, his mouth twisted up in a mocking smile. Well, what do we have here? Did the cute baby devil fail? Getu. Haku finally looked up from the ground, her eyes focused on the man. Empty except for some flickering of light, they failed to carry whatever emotion she was attempting to show. "What are you doing here?" Getu sneered. "The plan's been changed. Or rather I should say the plan's going exactly as expected." He put a hand behind his neck, cracking the joints. "I was never going to pay either of you in the first place. I was just going to kill both of you when everything was said and done. Much simpler that way." His eyes narrowed. "What?" Haku's voice had lowered to almost a whisper. Grinning, the corrupt businessman gestured at the small private army behind him. "It's quite simple, really. Usually hiring ninja from a sanctioned village is a risky and expensive job. Even with my subordinates I can't really be sure if they'll follow or just betray me." He tapped his hand on top of the cane. "But with missing nins I don't have to worry about whether they do or not. Instead I hire them and then kill them when the job is done and collect the bounty. After being weakened in battle, it doesn't take much to get rid of them with this many hired swords." Getu's eyes narrowed, his sneer becoming more pronounced. "Ingenious, isn't it, you bastard?" Naruto shouted. It was bad enough that listening to how the man treated ninja, people who were sworn to uphold the honor of their clients, made his blood boil. What made it worse was the sickening swirl of colors around Getu. It was nauseous, a blend of black, orange, and red that created a mix that made his stomach do backflips. "How can you treat human life like that? It's not like I can expect a child like you to understand that," he shrugged. But still, he walked over to Zabuza's cooling body, stopping a few inches away. What a weak demon, to be defeated by only one full-fledged ninja and a couple brats. Getu's foot lashed out, catching Zabuza's head. It snapped to the side, a sickening crack echoing through the air. "Zabuza-san, at least his head should be worth something. And I'm sure that that piece of scrap metal he called a sword will be worth a pretty penny to whatever idiot collector wants it." Getu sighed dramatically, like he was suffering from some kind of horrible fate. "Ah well, at least this endeavor wasn't a complete waste of time and effort." "You, hold it, Naruto." The boy stopped when he felt Kakashi grab his shoulder. The man's face was tightly knit, but Naruto could see a great deal of red flashing around the man's body. Even the dense genin could tell that the copy nin was barely reining in his anger. Naruto simply stood there and waited. Kakashi turned to the horde. "What are you going to do now?" Getu laughed. His voice grated on the ears, like a bandsaw on sheet metal slightly muted. He raised a hand and waved it behind him. "Isn't it obvious?" The horde lathered themselves into a frenzy. "We're gonna kill ya easy." "I see." Kakashi scratched his head, closing his eyes. He sighed. "Damn. This mission has been nothing but one bad twist after another." He spoke behind him. "Naruto. Yes. Go to Sakura and Sasuke, and get them and Tazuna out of here. But what about you? I don't have the time, energy, or patience to take out this many samurai wannabes while looking after you and the others. After all the jutsus I used, especially the latest ones, my chakra levels are all but depleted." "Then what the hell are Naruto?" The blonde bit his argument off at the tone in his sensei's voice. The colors around him were flashing and cycling like crazy. "Do I have to remind you again? You're a shinobi, your client is your top priority and you are supposed to follow your leader's, orders. Now go." Naruto bit his lip. What was he supposed to do? He couldn't leave Kakashi-sensei all by himself, but he also couldn't just leave his duty behind either. He was a ninja, he had to follow it through to the end. If he wanted to be Hokage, then he had to do the things that were expected of one. He had to. Naruto paused for a second. A mischievous and crooked grin slowly crept along his lips. That's right. He had to do what was expected of the Hokage. Fuck that. Kakashi's eyes widened at the sincerity and steel in the Jinchuriki's words. You think I'm gonna run after all that crap you said about ninja who don't follow the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are lower than that. I'll show ya what it means to be a true ninja. I'll show ya why I'm gonna be Hokage. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. In a poof of smoke, 5 extras Naruto appeared behind the original one. Their hands reached into their kunai pouch, taking out the bladed weapon as one. Internally wincing at the small number of clones he had barely managed to summon, Naruto figured it was the best he could after that tough fight with Haku. Speaking of whom, he turned around to see the desolate Nin staring blankly at the events that were occurring before him. He growled, "Haku, go to where Sakura-chan and Sasuke-tem are." Haku just continued to stare blankly. "There's no point in bothering. Without Zabuza-san, my use in this world has come to an end." She meant to say more but was interrupted when Naruto grabbed her by the scruff of her outfit, pulling him mere inches away from the blonde's face. "Listen you," he shouted. His emotions were already a wreck from Sasuke's near death and the short bastard that was Getuin. The sudden change in his vision made him think he was starting to slowly go insane, and now Haku's dive into depression was making it even more frustrating. So Naruto did the first thing he always did when his mind reached the breaking point in situations like this. He yelled exactly what he was thinking, regardless of whether it was the right, or smart, thing to do. "Really, frickin', loudly. Stop going on about how you have no use now that Zabuza's dead. You're a lot more than that, and I'm sure that even Zabuza believed that somewhere in that eyebrowless brain of his, too. But fine, if you're so damn stuck on being useful to someone then be useful to me." Haku's eyes widened as the boy continued his diatribe, and even the shadow clones and Kakashi seemed surprised and slightly impressed at the impulsive yet innately kind-hearted quality of Naruto's words and actions. "If you need to be someone's tool, be my tool. If you need to follow someone, follow me. If you need someone to be your master, I'll be your master. This world isn't so shitty that it doesn't need someone like me running around doing stuff, and it definitely doesn't need someone with your skills moping around and acting like an emo bastard." He grinned widely at some personal joke. Sasuke-tem already has that role covered. Kakashi slapped a hand against his face. The fool had been doing so well, and then he had to ruin the whole speech with a cheap shot at his rival. He sighed. It was scary, but Naruto was actually starting to resemble Obito and himself in a lot of ways. Naruto ignored, or more likely, didn't even notice Kakashi's reaction and continued with his rant. "You're not worthless, you're not just something to be used and thrown away. And if anyone ever says otherwise then I'll just beat the crap out of them, you included." He released his hold on Haku's clothes, allowing the boy to sink back to the ground on his knees. He felt a lot better after letting that all out, and even if he didn't know what the hell he himself was saying for half of that rant, he sure felt a whole lot more energetic anyway. "Put your skills to work, Haku. Don't let them rot. After all, if someone like me can become Hokage, and I damn sure will, I bet you can find someplace where you'll find what you're looking for." Clapping finished him off. Naruto turned to see Getu with a smirk on his face. "An elegant speech," he stated. "A grand weaving of words." His smile dropped. "And if killing you means that I'll never have to listen to such saccharine shit again I'll be all too happy to give the order." He tapped his fingers upon his other hand. "But I think I'll be even happier to kill you, Haku." Getu's mouth sank into a darkened scowl. "You broke my arm. I'll break a lot more." He raised his unbroken limb. "Boys, you can. Sweden. Sensatsu Susho. URK. Many, most of all Getu, were very surprised to see the short man suddenly turned into a pincushion by the several dozen water needles that had pierced his body within the span of a couple seconds. The corrupt man fell to the ground with a splash, his face submerged in a small puddle. Looking, they could see Haku standing up, her one hand stuck in the last hand seal of the jutsu she had just performed. Naruto trembled. I am under your command, Naruto-sama, he said with a small bow. The colors had swirled again, revealing a soft, light blue, the darker colors being buried underneath. Naruto-sama, I am now and shall always be your tool until you no longer have use for me, just as you stated. She grabbed a free hand and brought it to her forehead, pressing the back gently to her scratched and bloodied skin. Even Naruto could sense the reverence the boy held from that simple action. Please use me as you see fit. Okay. Really, how was he supposed to react to something like this? He was just spouting whatever came to mind in an attempt to release Haku from her depression. He didn't think she would actually take it seriously. The boy had obviously never heard of codependency before, but he would soon find out just how awkward things would become. Thank you, Naruto. He turned around towards where Sakura's voice was coming from. He's okay. Sasuke-kun's alright, said boy was leaning on her, one arm slung around her shoulder. He was obviously uncomfortable with the vulnerability he was showing, but Naruto could still make out a small smirk. He knew that smile. Bastard Sasuke was going to be just fine. Naruto turned to Haku, who only smiled softly in affirmation. He grinned and pounded his fists together. All right. Hey, don't think this is over yet. Yeah, you killed our meal ticket. What are we going to do now? The ninjas turned to see the horde of mercenaries had turned restless, angered and shocked over the death of their employer. Their fury grew, until they exploded into a cacophony of insults, slurs, and death threats. Red washed over them like a tidal wave, bulging larger and larger with every passing second. We're gonna kill ya. Then we're gonna ransack the village and take everything they've got. The red wave surged. Let's go. Shit. This isn't good. Everything stood still when a small arrow pierced the ground in front of the oncoming horde. They all turned to see the origin. What met them was the entirety of Wave Country armed to the teeth, with small Inari standing at the forefront. A miniature crossbow was in his hands, and pots and pans were acting as armor on his tiny frame. His face was wound into a small and grim frown. If any of you come any further, the citizens of this country will beat you down with everything they have. Inari. The young boy grinned at Naruto. The hero always comes at the end, right? He laughed, echoing Naruto's earlier words when the ninja had saved him and his mother from the mercenaries at his home. Naruto grinned back, emboldened by the once weak and pessimistic crybaby. He barked out a laugh in return, and turned back to the thugs. Okay, you guys, he ordered his clones. You ready to have some fun? Right, boss. I am ready to serve as well, Naruto-sama. Senbons burst from Haku's fingertips, ready to pierce all that would dare stand against her or her master. Well, I guess this is the best I can do as well. Kakashi sighed and made the ram seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Kakashi version. Kakashi clones exploded into existence, enough so that they were able to reach across the width of the bridge 3 times over. They seemed solid enough, but they were just Bunshins which had a bit more chakra forced into them to look whole. But it wasn't like they were meant to attack. If the bandits were stupid enough, such a bluff would frighten them off easily. Kakashi decided to sweeten the deal. Well, every single clone asked this in unison. The synchronization of their voices had a rather creepy effect. Are you coming or what? Needless to say, the mercenaries decided to cut their losses and flee, piling onto a small boat and getting the hell out of there. They weren't paid enough to deal with that kind of shit. The citizens of Wave Country and the ninjas burst into cheers. It was over. Getu was no more, and they could finally live a life without fear. As everyone quickly fell into celebration mode, Naruto grabbed hold of the closest person to him and drew them into a hug, bouncing up and down like the child he really was. All right, Haku, we did it. We really did it. Haku was startled by the younger boy's sudden movement. A small flush raced across his cheeks as a surprised look whisked into his eyes. Zabuza had never shown any affection to him. Heck, no one had shown any affection to him after the death of his parents, so it was understandable that she was unaccustomed to such actions. Still, he had to admit that they were neither unpleasant nor unwanted, just simply startling. This young boy, no, her master, he was sure that Naruto would make wonderful use of her. Haku looked at him. She was drawn to something immediately. Beautiful eyes. An ocean of blue with a ring of silver. It made them seem so deep, so vast. He blinked when Naruto actually took the time to look at him. Haku. Yes, Naruto-sama. He seemed embarrassed for a second. He coughed. Can I ask you something? Anything. Are you really a boy? Haku blinked again, but then smiled genially and opened her mouth to answer. What do you think? RRRRR. Oh, I don't frickin' believe this. Naruto used a finger to pull the bottom part of his eyelid down, staring into the mirror he had borrowed from Tsunami. There it was, a twirling ring of silver that circled just around the outskirts of his pupils. It even grew and shrunk in accordance with his pupils adjusting to light. He had barely noticed it before, only when he had nearly slammed headfirst into a mirror during the village's celebrations did he see the mutation within his irises in his reflection. Was it because of Kyuubi? Did the stupid fox actually have a physical effect on his body after that first emergence? He couldn't think of anything else, but he thought that it would have been red instead of silver. Haku had mentioned that his eyes had turned entirely crimson during his, well, outbreak. Of course, Naruto hadn't told her about Kyuubi, instead poorly lying that it must have been because of all the chakra being thrown around. Naruto didn't think Haku would believe that for long. Great. Resisting the urge to bash his head on the table, Naruto looked around. He was currently within an unused room in Tezuna's house. Outside he could hear the party getting into full swing. He didn't know why he was moping inside when he could have been laughing it up with Inari and the others, but seeing as his eyes had suddenly mutated, he felt he had good reason to. At first he found what he saw to be surprising. Then he found it cool. The colors around everyone were definitely beautiful to look at, and it was interesting to see how they interacted with each person. But to be honest, his eyes were starting to burn after watching too many colors flow between too many people for too long, and he had to excuse himself, which inevitably led to him finding out about his eyes' discoloration in the first place. Naruto fell onto his back. Why couldn't they be cool like Sasuke's? The Uchiha had been brooding over the sudden activation of his bloodline limit, Sakura cooing over how awesome the bastard was, and Kakashi praising him on the accomplishment. And Naruto had been left alone to sulk over the fact that he was probably going to go blind with the world turning into some sort of painter's acid trip. It never occurred to him to tell them about his eyes' sudden change in perception. Truthfully, he didn't think they would notice or care. It was all about Sasuke again. Still, Naruto chuckled evilly when the Uchiha had discovered who had beaten him. Haku was a girl. A girl had beaten the coveted last of the Uchiha. And now she saw Naruto as her one and only master. He still found it surprising that Haku was a girl. Even though she was a couple years older than him, she had a very slender and slim figure. She didn't have many curves, and her hadn't really matured that much. It was only when Kakashi noted that Haku had the distinctive lack of an Adam's apple that Naruto finally believed the girl. She was very beautiful, though, and her form of speech was rather feminine, so he supposed it shouldn't have been too hard to believe. He wasn't surprised that none of the others had accepted Haku yet. She had been working for the villain. Even he was having a little trouble with that fact. But then again, if there was one thing that Naruto was, it was trusting. As long as someone was willing to be friends, he was more than willing to take that friendship and run with it. The boy was starved for companionship, and Haku, though the relationship was odd at best and mildly disturbing at worst, was the best bet he had. He was so distracted by his thoughts that he didn't hear the thumping of footsteps behind him until his view was blocked by a falling body. Air hissed out of his lungs when a small child impacted with his chest, driving everything out. Naruto Ni-chan, what are you doing around here? Come on out to the party. Everyone's waiting for you. Gra, damn it, Inari. Naruto growled. That had really hurt. His frown faded when he saw the happy look on Inari's face. There were also the yellow and orange streams that wrapped themselves around the boy. Geez, how could he stay pissed when the kid was exuding his favorite color like a volcano? He sighed. Yeah, I'm coming. He pushed the boy off him, scrabbling to his knees. Looking up, his face registered surprise. Haku, the former foe hunter nin, bowed in his direction. Naruto-sama, what are you doing here? She frowned. A tool must always be on hand so that it can be used whenever it is needed. The Uzumaki frowned in return. Ah geez, don't start that again. Listen, you don't have to do whatever I say. You can do whatever you want. Don't just follow me. Are you taking back what you said about having a use for me? Though there was no change in her facial expressions, he could see her colors shifting towards the darker end of the spectrum. Even if he had no idea what it meant, even Naruto could figure that darker meant bad things. No, he waved his hands in a placating motion. I meant it. If there was one thing Naruto understood, it was never have bad things happen to, or come from, a woman. Sakura had beaten that concept into his head enough times. He sighed mentally when Haku's colors shifted back to a soft blue. What was with the girl and the color blue? Orange was such a better color. Glancing at her, he absently looked over what she was wearing. Since Haku's old shinobi outfit had been ripped, torn, and sufficiently bloodied during their battle with each other, Tsunami had taken it upon herself to get the girl some new clothing. What she was wearing now was reminiscent of what he had seen her in when they first met without her mask. A simple pink yukata with zori, her hair unraveled to hang down past the small of her back. Naruto had to admit that she looked pretty in it, though her deadpan expression was kind of hurting the whole look. He groaned. Could you at least drop the sama? I'm afraid I can't do that. Naruto-sama. Naruto-sama is Naruto-sama. Thus I must call you Naruto-sama. The corner of her mouth quirked up a bit more cheekily than he had ever seen before. Fine, he sighed. Very well, if I may escort you and Inari-kun to the party. Inari answered with a cry of consent. Grabbing Naruto with one hand, he more or less dragged the ninja out the house. Haku followed a short clip behind, making sure that nothing happened to the two. When Naruto emerged, he was rushed by an onslaught of cheers, lights and colors. Holy crap, there's orange everywhere. The color pervaded every bit of the place. It hung from the sky, crawled along the ground, winded its way across each and every person. Every person was radiating the color like heat from an explosive note. Naruto was shoved into the fray, hands clapping him on the back, shaking his hand, ruffling his hair. Words were shouted at him, ones of praise, of thanks, of amazement. He had never had that much positive attention in his life. Grinning like a madman, he was shoved into a headlock by Tazuna. The old man was fairly drunk by this point, seeing no reason not to refrain from his personal choice of showing happiness, or sadness, or irritation, or boredom. Hell, he just liked it. He took a swig off his jug before grinning. You did one hell of a job, midget. No thanks to you, ya drunk Gigi. The words lacked their spite as both Naruto and Tazuna were just joking with one another. The tension that was initially between the two was long gone by now. Celebrating pretty heartily, huh? I've good reason to. He swung the jug of sake underneath the boy's nose. You want a sip? I'm only 13, ya old coot. I'm not old enough to drink yet. Never a reason not to start early. Hell, I had my first drink when I was only 8 years old. Somehow I don't find that surprising. Bah, you're no fun. Chizuna ribbed good-naturedly. He let go of the boy and shoved Naruto forward. Go hang out with your squad. This old man still has a lot of partying to do. With that he turned back to the party, raising his sake into the air. More boos. He was answered by a loud shout from everyone as the party continued. Naruto looked to where the others were. He saw the other 3 of his squad gathered together, talking with Tsunami. Well, Kakashi was attempting to flirt with her and failing horribly while Sasuke was brooding as he activated and deactivated his Sharingan, nearly his entire body wrapped in bandages, while Sakura just watched in blissful adoration. Naruto grinned. Sakura-chan, he yelled, running over to the Pinkett. He ignored the annoyed look on her face as he reached her. Nay, Sakura-chan, ya wanna go dance? They look like they're playing some good stuff right now. Indeed, the sound of a few string instruments and flutes floated on the breeze as the village's small band livened up the festivities. The girl frowned. Honestly, the blonde could be so infuriating sometimes. Naruto, can't you see we're busy right now? Sasuke-kun's trying to get his Sharingan to work. Naruto scowled. So, all he's doing is making his eye blink on and off. I don't really see what's so special about that. Sasuke's eye sunk back to black. He glanced away from the tree where leaves were falling. With his Sharingan on, each one fell at a pace twice as slow as those when the Kekkei Jiniki was off. His reflexes had definitely increased with its activation. Even though Kakashi had told him to take it easy, he refused and escaped from his bed as soon as he could. The Junin hadn't tried to put him back since. Looking at the two, his brow furrowed. Both of them were annoying. Sakura with her idol worship and Naruto with his incompetence, and yet he could never seem to get rid of either of them. They were like barnacles that refused to let go. Locking his gaze on the prankster, he groused, "Unlike you, I actually have innate talent. If I want to keep being the best, I have to sharpen my talent." Almost as an afterthought, he slipped out, "Dobi." Naruto growled, "Oh, really? Well, your innate talent meant shit when Haku beat you. And I beat Haku, so that must mean I'm better than you, right?" Sasuke suddenly stood, shoving his face into Naruto's. "What was that, Dobi?" Naruto shoved his face right back. "Exactly what I said, Tem." Sakura growled, These boys were getting so frustrating to deal with. Already, inner Sakura was yelling to just bash them both in the head, and then drag Sasuke off to some undisclosed location. She blushed at that notion. Had to file that away for later. She began to interrupt the two and chastise Naruto for bothering her beloved Sasuke-kun, but Haku beat her to the punch. "Naruto-sama, please do not act in such an unbecoming manner. It does not befit one of your status." Sakura gaped. "What do you mean, one of his status? Naruto's an idiot, the bottom of our class." The boy visibly flinched at her stinging words. It still hurt whenever she said stuff like that. Haku noticed this. Her features drew together in a frown. "Naruto-sama is my master and thus deserves my respect. As his tool, I must make sure that he is well received among those he associates with." Sasuke snorted, as if Dobi could ever amount to anything. "Hey, if those eyes make you so damn special then I'm the same as you." "My eyes have been freaking out all day," he growled, the rumbling echoing from deep inside his throat. "What are you talking?" Sasuke trailed off as he took a better look at Naruto's eyes. Even from this close of a distance he had failed to notice the change. "Naruto." His voice had taken an unusually serious and non-sarcastic tone, especially considering that it was directed at the blonde. "What happened to your eyes? What do you mean, Sasuke-kun?" Sakura moved closer and then jumped back. Naruto. Your eyes. I know that already. Naruto waved his hands above his head in an erratic manner. I said that they were the same as Sasuke's. Naruto. What are you trying to pull? Sasuke's voice had become dangerously low and soft. How the hell should I know? They've been acting odd since the battle with Haku and I just noticed the change a little while ago. What's going on here? Kakashi ambled his way over to where his genin students were, wincing at the pain in his shin. Inari had kicked him there to stop his incessant flirting with his mother. The little brat, he kept particular attention on Haku. He still didn't trust the girl. Why would she change her alliances to Naruto so quickly, so soon after Zabuza's death? He might not have looked like it, but Kakashi was remarkably observant and perceptive. He wouldn't have survived so long as an Anbu captain otherwise. He couldn't just think everything was okay simply because the girl said it was. Regardless of her age or gender, she was still a high-level missing nin, and a dangerous one at that. Kakashi-sensei. Naruto eyes are. What about Naruto's eyes? He hadn't bothered to check over the boy, more worried over Haku and Sasuke's recovery. When he did, however, his revealed eye widened. Whipping his hand forward, he caught Naruto's chin and brought him forward, staring intensely. Kakashi-sensei. Quiet. He blinked and lazily turned his head to the side. That really isn't necessary. You know, he drawled at the Senbon needle poked against his jugular. Haku had sneaked behind him. Something that was all but impossible for the even stealthiest of ninja, her face a cold mask. I'm not going to do anything. It's okay, Haku, Naruto said. Kakashi-sensei won't do anything stupid. He smirked. Although it wouldn't be the first time. Kakashi sighed. You really know how to defuse a situation, kid. Naruto just shrugged, but it did the job as Haku nodded and withdrew the needle from Kakashi's artery. Kakashi frowned and went back to looking at Naruto's eyes. As far as he could tell, there was no residual Kyuubi chakra. The seal had either it up or dissipated whatever was left. Perhaps it was a genjutsu. But Naruto didn't have the aptitude for genjutsu, even for a simple colorization jutsu. Kakashi's frown deepened. He couldn't think of any jutsu that Naruto could use or could be performed on the boy. Naruto, how long has it been like this? Right after I fought Haku. Anything else strange? Well, he figured he might as well let it all out. Unless he got his eyes fixed soon, he would probably go crazy from all the crap he saw, or else just avoid humans for the rest of his life. As far as he could tell, it only worked on them, bypassing trees and animals completely. I can see colors. Most people can see colors, Dobi. Though you being colorblind would probably explain that tacky jumpsuit you always wear. Naruto swallowed the insult that tried to escape from his mouth. The smirk on the taller boy was pissing him off, but Naruto had more important things to worry about, like the maelstrom of colors that swirled around him. No, I mean I'm seeing, well, extra colors. Things like ribbons of light or random splotches. Things that shouldn't be there. Kakashi nodded slowly. Naruto, could you explain a little further? He removed his hand from Naruto's chin and stepped back. Naruto nodded. Okay, it's like this. Well, it's like there are the regular colors. Like Kakashi-sensei's uniform. There's his green Junin vest and his black shirt and pants. There's also his silver hair and all the rest. But when I look at you more, there's all these other colors, too. There's blue, lots of blue, some pink, and a little bit of gold. It's kind of like I can see chakra around you, but I know it's not chakra, you know. I see. Naruto, have your eyes been hurting lately? Huh, yeah. They started burning just as the colors showed up. Crap. Kakashi hoped this didn't mean what he thought it did, but he was having serious doubts that it could be anything else. Suddenly seeing colors no one else could, eyes that burned, and Kakashi couldn't instantly see any kind of jutsu being performed on or by the genin. There was only one thing he could really think of off the top of his head. Naruto, I need you to do something for me. The boy nodded. I need you to feel your chakra. Can you do that? Naruto closed his eyes, and Kakashi could feel the boy instinctively release his chakra while searching for the way it flowed. Got it. Okay. Now, do you feel any of it flowing anywhere near your eyes? A little. Cut it off. Naruto's eyes flashed. Instead of the ring simply disappearing, it erased itself little by little, making it seem like the ring was being eaten from one end to the other. When it was completely gone, Naruto grinned brightly. Hey, I can't the colors anymore. Just as I thought, Kakashi muttered. He couldn't believe it. He just couldn't believe it. Out of all the people who could possibly manifest such a thing, it just had to be Naruto. Still, he was Konoha's #1 surprise ninja. Kakashi supposed something like this was bound to happen sooner or later, though not at the same time as when Sasuke grew into his clan's heritage. Sasuke could see the emotions running through his sensei's eye. Already he was reaching the same conclusion that Kakashi had. But there was no way he could accept that. Dobi was Dobi, the loser of the class, the crud scraped off the bottom of the barrel. How could he possibly have anything in common with the elite Sasuke? I have no idea how it happened, but congratulations, Naruto. You are now the proud owner of a Kekkei Genkai, most likely a Dojutsu of some sort since it's focused on your eyes. Everything was silent. Then it all exploded with exclamations, questions, and cries of outrage. Ha! Take that, Sasuke Tem. You're not so special with your Sharingan after all. Don't get so uppity, Dobi. Your damn Dojutsu will never match the perfection of the Sharingan. Kakashi-sensei. What do you mean Naruto has a Kekkei Genkai? How come we never heard of this before now? As the conversation degenerated into nothing more than a shouting match, Kakashi groaned. What he wouldn't give for his Ika books right now. But Tsunami had found them earlier when he was unconscious and recovering from his first fight with Zabuza and had disposed of them. He thought burning them with gasoline and then sprinkling the remains with salt was overdoing it a bit, but the look she gave him brooked no argument. He needed his little orange book so bad. 2 weeks had passed. 2 weeks since Zabuza had died in battle, 2 weeks since Getu's reign had ended, and 2 weeks since Haku had joined the group. The bridge was finished, built ahead of time with all the help that Naruto's Kage Bunshin had given. Even though the economy of the country would probably not get better for a while, the bridge was a symbol and promise of things to come. It was a step in the right direction, and though Wave Country may not become prosperous within the current generation, it was certain it would in future ones. Naruto had found the past few weeks both exciting and extremely tiring. It was bad enough trying to compete with Sasuke when the boy hardly acknowledged him as anything more than a bug. He thought there had been a breakthrough during the fight on the bridge, but whatever understanding gained had been lost shortly afterward and the two fell back into the old pattern of trying to one-up each other. It wasn't helping that Sasuke was already making leaps and bounds with his Dojutsu. Even though it had just recently been activated, the dark-haired teen could now easily access it at will. Kakashi had even started giving him private training sessions to try and draw out the bloodline limit's power. Under the tutelage of the copy nin, it was easy to see Sasuke's rapid increase in progress. But Naruto had no idea what he was doing. It had taken a week just for him to get the right feeling of shoving chakra into his eyes, but he could activate his own Dojutsu now. Other than that, he was completely lost. Kakashi had admitted to never seeing that particular Dojutsu before, so he was no help. In fact, he didn't think that such a Dojutsu had ever existed before, a wild card. Somehow the idea of a completely unknown bloodline limit manifesting in Naruto made the most sense Kakashi had ever witnessed. Sasuke, of course, had outright ignored him, his sense of superiority deteriorating under the idea that he wasn't so special anymore. Sakura had split herself between cheering Sasuke on and helping the various villagers in town with reconstruction. Haku had been the most help of all. Though he supposed it was only because she considered Naruto to be her master, it was still nice to know that someone actually cared about him. Unfortunately, she had not been able to shed any light on his situation either. She knew enough about Kekkei Genkais to help explain the generalities and some of the specifics of them, but when it came to Naruto's, she was as much in the dark as anyone else. So now Naruto could see the world in glorious technicolor, as he had mirthlessly joked once. Still, even though it appeared to be a relatively useless bloodline limit at the moment, at the very least it was beautiful to look at. For each person there was a different design of colors and shapes. Some people held lighter colors, some people held darker, and some people held a healthy mixture of both. There were ribbons, dots, splotches, and everything else. It was like an extra set of clothing that people wore, and Naruto, when he wasn't busy helping with the bridge or pestering Kakashi to teach him something, wandered through the village searching for various combinations. He had decided to name the phenomenon flow, after watching Haku practice a water jutsu that allowed her to move water around her like a cloak. The flow of colors from one place to another, turning from one shape to the next, heavily resembled the teen's movements. Naruto had become closer to Haku, but there was still a lot of hidden territory between them. She called herself Naruto's tool, and there was a certain distance between the two that she never seemed comfortable to try and close. He had attempted it several times, either through light conversation or some kind of joke, but there was always something missing in the middle. She would smile. Yes, but that smile always lacked something though. He knew a bit about her tragic past, a little about her personality, but beyond that Naruto knew squat. It was hard on him to see someone so like himself unwilling to make the change to better themselves. But he would try. On his promise to be Hokage, he would try. The 2 weeks had also determined what was going to be done with Haku. Kakashi decided that they would bring her with them. She was obviously no longer affiliated with Zabuza, and had proven herself trustworthy enough to at least bring to Konoha. The Hokage would decide what to do with her afterward. No matter what Naruto had to say about it, though, she had tried to kill them before. That would make it a bit hard for her to get away without some sort of punishment. But now the mission was over, and it was time to head back to Konoha. Naruto stared at the grave in front of him. Zabuza's sword was planted right behind the grave marker, signaling where one of the famous 7 swordsmen of the mist was buried. Haku was beside him, a saddened, nearly empty look in her eyes. She still had never fully gotten over Zabuza's death, and Naruto doubted that she ever would. Sakura looked over at the older girl. She had not gotten close to the missing nin, and barely knew her to begin with. There was still fear and resentment over the wounds Haku had placed on Sasuke's body, but now there was also empathy towards her. The sadness was there, palatable and thick. Even so, there was still something she had to ask. Haku, the girl turned to her. After everything that happened, do you still believe that we shinobi are nothing but tools? That there's nothing more for us? Haku smiled hauntingly. Yes. There was no need to explain herself, it was simply what she believed. Kakashi watched them from behind before speaking up. A shinobi isn't supposed to pursue his own goals, only those of his country. It's the most important thing, to become a tool when needed. It's the same for all villages, even Leaf. That really the true way? Naruto mumbled softly. He was still thinking about Haku, about that treatment. Kakashi shrugged. It's the same for all ninja, wondering where they are on that path. Even Zabuza. And even, he let his sentence trail off, so it was vague whether he was talking about Haku, the genin, or even himself. They were silent for a few moments. Naruto broke it by slamming a fist into his palm. Okay. I got it. I'm gonna be a ninja in my own way, find my own path. He turned to Haku, who was staring bewilderedly at him. You'll see, Haku. I'll show you. Even if it takes years, I'll show you that, someday, you don't have to be a tool to find your worth. You'll be your own worth, by your own self. I promise ya that. The others gaped at the complete lack of tact the boy had shown towards the girl's ideals. Only Kakashi recovered easily, his eye closing into an amused look. Only Naruto. Haku looked at Naruto, looked at the boy who was her master, at the man who had denied her will for living. And yet, she could only think to do one thing. She smiled. Yes, Naruto-sama. The world was such a colorful place. As the sun filtered through the leaves, a multitude of feet, crunching dirt and gravel underneath them, could be heard floating on the air. The forest was growing thicker and becoming quieter the further the group walked, and it wasn't long before almost no noise could be sensed at all. It signified a sign that they were only a short way from reaching the walls of Konoha. Naruto was in the front of the pack, talking animatedly between Sakura and Haku while throwing dirty looks back at Sasuke every once in a while. Their relationship had grown worse ever since they left Wave Country and especially since they had entered Fire Country. With every mile they drew closer to the hidden village, it simply solidified the fact that Sasuke would be praised for his achievements with the Sharingan and Naruto would learn about his own Dojutsu, creating a new rivalry that would probably not end for a while. Haku smiled and nodded in turn with Naruto's comments, making small, offhand remarks every now and then to keep the conversation going, but not making any significant contribution. Even Sakura was talking more with Naruto than she usually did. Then again, Sasuke was being even more aloof than usual and she was burning to converse with anyone. Considering Kakashi-sensei was clearly out of the picture ever since he managed to pick up a copy of the latest Ika Ika series at the last village they had rested at, Naruto and Haku were her only options. And to be fair, it really wasn't all that bad. Naruto had yet to make an inappropriate comment, simply blabbing on about everything and nothing. Surprising. As soon as we get back I'm going straight to Ichiraku's for some ramen. I haven't had any for days now. We have to report to the Hokage first, Naruto. Sakura puffed. The boy had become even more energetic since the discovery of his Kekkei Genkai, something she hadn't thought was physically possible. Ah, is that true? Kakashi-sensei. Huh, yeah, sure, whatever. The man giggled as he flipped through another page of his book. Ah, he missed his Ika-chan so much. Naruto blew out his cheeks and stomped up to the Junin. Stop reading that smut, and pay attention. With every word, Naruto made a grab for the orange book, but each time Kakashi lazily moved it out of the way and avoided him. Eventually, he just placed a hand on Naruto's forehead, preventing the boy was advancing any further due to his short stature. It's not smut, it's literature. Kakashi chided condescendingly. Even though he continued to speak, the man refused to take his eyes off the pages. Sakura's right, though. We have to report to Sarutobi-sama first and relay our mission results, and also introduce Haku. Plus I would think you of all people, Naruto, would want to speak with him about your new eyes. Naruto calmed down, his eyes beginning to sparkle at the concept. You really think he'd know what to do? Probably. His nickname, the Professor, isn't just hot air. The man has done more research on jutsus, bloodlines, limits, and knows more than any other ninja in Konoha and even some of the other hidden villages. He flicked the boy on the nose and walked past him. So calm down and everything will go by quickly. Idly rubbing at his nose, Naruto grinned wider as thought what the old man would say. Maybe his Dojutsu had some effect that could let him beat any enemy easily. He could already see himself standing over Sasuke as the Uchiha drowned in his own inferiority. Yeah, awesome. Sasuke frowned as Naruto let out a yelp and ran ahead of the group. Haku followed swiftly after him as the blonde disappeared over a small hill. Idiot! Naruto landed on a branch, the bough swaying underneath his weight as he put a hand to his brow, staring off into the distance. He felt the branch swing again as more weight settled on it. Turning, he saw that Haku was crouching next to him. He grinned at her slightly odd expression. It was more emotion than she usually showed. Awesome, huh? Yes, Naruto-sama. Farther down the path, the two could see the giant walls of Konoha. They towered over all the tress that surrounded village, a reminder as to why very few had managed to breach Konoha since it had first been founded. Barely, just barely, tufts of green overflowed from the top of the walls, signifying just why Konoha was designated as the village hidden amongst the leaves. This your first time seeing it? Yes, it is indeed impressive. I visited Fire Country a few times when I was traveling with Zabuza-san. At this her odd expression quickly drooped but then picked itself up again. Naruto never noticed, but we never traveled close enough to see Konoha. Cause of the whole missing Enin thing. Indeed. Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore. Naruto placed a hand on the girl's shoulder, squeezing it in comfort. Konoha can be your new home. You'll never have to wander the world ever again. I promise ya that. Haku bowed deeply, a feat to her dexterity as she was already balancing herself on a thin tree branch. Thank you, Naruto-sama. No problem, Naruto. Get down from there. We've got to get going. Coming. Sakura-cha. Ack. The branch splintered from underneath him as he prepared to spring off, unaccustomed to the weight of two people. Naruto plummeted to the ground below, absently thinking that, while he would not be that badly injured, it would still hurt a hell of a lot. He could vaguely hear shouts of surprise and fear. Huh, well at least they cared enough about him to worry. Still, this reminded him of when he had just finished learning tree walking. Only then he had been caught by Sasuke. This time even the Uchiha probably couldn't catch him in time. He was surprised to find that, instead of impacting with a hard surface, he was instead caught by something indubitably softer that compacted dirt. Looking up, Naruto saw Haku frowning in concern as she held him in her arms. You really must be more aware of your surrounding, Naruto-sama. Heh. Oops. Thanks, Haku. As long as you are safe and understand. As soon as she placed the boy down, Sakura marched up to them and grabbed Naruto by the ear. You idiot. You could have been really hurt there. You don't have reflexes like Sasuke-kun or the others. Truth be told, she had been a bit scared for the boy's safety. Even though he was annoying and an idiot, he was still her valued teammate. A fond smile almost escaped from her lips as she watched Naruto fluster and whine before she forced it back down. He had changed during the mission. She had seen a better side of him, a cooler side of him. But he still would never be as cool as Sasuke, nope. I'm gonna drag you all the way back to Konoha so you don't any more stupid things. Wait, Sakura-chan, can't ya just, itatatata. Haku watched as Sakura held true to her promise and dragged the protesting blonde behind her by the ear. While it was rude, Haku did not see any harm in it. Sakura was caring about the boy in her own violent way. As long as it had no lasting repercussions, Haku would not interfere. The group eventually arrived at the gates to Konoha. The wooden doors were huge, more of a monument than an actual entrance or gateway. They reached hundreds of feet in the air and were a couple of meters thick, weighing at nearly several tons of finely crafted, dense wood. The number of people who could actually open the gate under their own power could be counted on one hand. Luckily there was a more practical entrance located at the bottom of the right-hand door. Kakashi hailed the two Chunin guards that were standing watch. Yo, we're here to report that our mission's been completed and that we need to report to the Hokage. One of the Chunins scanned the group, distastefully scowling at Naruto, who just scowled right back, before landing on Haku. The girl doesn't seem to be registered as a leaf ninja, he noted of her lack of a leaf Hittite. What's her business with your group? Kakashi flapped his hand as though it was nothing to be considered heavily. She's a rogue nin we picked up in Wave Country. She stated that she wanted asylum here. The other guard blinked. You just want to bring a missing nin into our village and show her right to the Hokage. She could be an assassin for all you know. Kakashi disappeared and reappeared right in front of the Chunin. His eye crinkled into an amused U-shape as it stared into the Chunin's from barely an inch away. And you think that I, a Junin, would not have considered that? And no, sir. The man stuttered. Kakashi Hatake was not a man to screw with. He didn't become a Junin at such a young age and then immediately head into Anbu for nothing. If you screwed with him, you'd be screwed 10 times worse. Many people could attest to it. Many others could attest to doing it anyway just for the sake of principle. RRRRR. Somewhere in the village a man with huge brows inside of a stretchy green suit sneezed as he watched his genin practice. No, his fires of youth were beginning to dwindle. He had to stoke them. Off to climb the Hokage monument with only his feet. RRRRR. Then would you mind letting us through? The Chunin shakily nodded and ordered for the entrance to be opened. When it was, the group swiftly made their way through the village and then entered the Hokage's tower. They found Sarutobi sifting through a mountain of paperwork. Bloody paperwork. Most powerful man in Konoha and his most dreaded enemies were ink stains and paper cuts. His eyebrows twitched as he sensed the Team Plus One come into the room. A smile flitted across his face. So you finally finished the mission. Congratulations to all of you. An eyebrow rose as he caught sight of Haku. Eyes swerved to Kakashi, asking what this meant. The copy nin shrugged. Turned out the C mission wasn't a C mission. He continued to go on and explain everything that had happened except for Naruto's manifested bloodline limit. He felt it would be more interesting if he let the blonde blurt it out. I see. Sarutobi folded his hands together. That indeed does make a difference. I assume you made plans over the pay change with the client. Kakashi nodded, internally grumbling at the haggling Tazuna had tried with him. Damn cheap, old man. Very well, I'll upgrade it to an S-class mission as well as the pay for it. Sakura and Naruto cheered at the idea of the huge increase in reward money. Sarutobi turned to Haku. So you mean to say you wish to reside in Konoha, Haku-kun? Yes, Hokage-sama, the girl said respectfully. Inwardly the Hokage chuckled. Such a polite girl. It was strange that she had decided to follow Naruto, a lad who couldn't follow basic etiquette or social procedures even to save his life. And is there any reason as to why I should let this happen? Haku's face did not change. I have pledged my life to Naruto-sama, thus I must be with him always. Even if you are his superior, I answer to him, not you. I do not need your permission to do so, though I would prefer to have it instead of not. Sarutobi said nothing. He picked up his pipe, scrabbling for some tobacco. When he realized he wouldn't find it any time soon with all the paperwork crowded everywhere, he sighed and placed the pipe down. He placed a hand on his cheek. Very well, I'll allow you to reside here. Yeah, you're great, Sarutobi-jii-san. Naruto grabbed Haku by the hands, shaking them up and down in glee. Isn't that great, Haku? You get to stay here with us. Yes, Naruto-sama, she smiled gently. Sarutobi nodded. He was glad that things had ended like this. From what he could tell from Kakashi's report, both the verbal one just now and the written one the man had sent ahead of time, the girl obviously had a few mental problems, probably some form of codependency and severe identity issues. He really didn't want to force the girl away from her one pillar of support when she was a highly trained ninja who apparently kept Sanbon on every inch of her body. Sarutobi had noticed the way the girl had tensed earlier, an obvious sign she was prepared to attack. The Anbu guards hidden around him would disable her before she could do anything, but Sarutobi didn't feel like having Naruto go on a tirade about how he hurt his new friend. Besides, with the girl's rare Kekkei Genkai, the Shinobi Council would be clamoring for her to join their ranks. Of course, he would be the one to decide over the procedure of doing so. Sarutobi found the idea of turning humans into literal breeding stock distasteful and sickening, and he oftentimes wondered just what the high-ranking shinobi were thinking. No, with Haku's adamant view of Naruto as her master, she could easily join Konoha without worry of the clans trying to claim her. "I suppose you would like a job working in our ranks," the Hokage said. "If it would help me support Naruto-sama, then yes." Sarutobi looked over at Kakashi, who was subtly watching everything with his one eye. "Wait." The man looked closer. Eye narrowed a little more than usual. Mask turned up in the slightest of fashions. Hand crooked up just so. Oh, for the love of, the ninja was reading Ika Ika in his presence again. "Kakashi," he barked. The Junin made no move as to look like he was caught doing something he shouldn't. He lazily looked back, his eye caught in that infernal crinkle. "Yes, sir. What would you say Haku-kun's level of skill be?" Kakashi frowned. "At least a high-level Chunin with her overall speed, strength, and skills. But she could probably make a special Junin with her finely tuned grasp on anatomy and her Kekkei Genkai." "Very well." He turned back to Haku. "Haku-kun, sometime in the next few days I would like you to return here so that we can determine your rank and status and install you in Konoha's shinobi directory. Is that clear?" "Yes, Hokage-sama. Is there anything else needed to be said before I dismiss you all?" Naruto exploded at the opportunity. Nay, Sarutobi Jii-san. "Guess what?" The man sighed. "What, Naruto?" He wouldn't be surprised if the boy said he was going to be Hokage with all the success happening lately. That or he was going to bug the man about some sort of jutsu in the village vault. "I've got my own Kekkei Genkai now." Sarutobi eyes immediately locked on to Kakashi. This was not in the written mission report. The copy nin stared right back, acting as if he was completely innocent in the matter. Sarutobi swallowed the groan that tried to kick its way out. "Of all the, what do you mean by that, Naruto? I've got a bloodline limit as well. And it's a Dojutsu to boot. Now Sasuke Tem isn't the only special one on the team." Sarutobi swallowed. "Would you mind letting me look at it?" Naruto nodded energetically. "Sure." He activated his eyes, the silver ring cutting through his irises. Sarutobi watched as it happened. He was completely baffled. Neither the Namikaze nor the Uzumaki clans had any Kekkei Genkais in them. Sure, the Namikazes were renowned for their seal-making and the Uzumakis were experts at water jutsus, but none of their skills could qualify for a bloodline limit. And a Dojutsu at that. Only two Dojutsus had existed in Konoha before, the Uchiha's Sharingan and the Hyuga's Byakugan. And now a brand new one had manifested. And in the human container of the Kyuubi. Oh, the council was not going to like this. He motioned for Naruto to come forward, and when the boy did, Sarutobi grabbed him by the face, pulling him closer for a better look. "Naruto, what effects does this have on your eyes?" Naruto explained about the flow he had seen, the colors and shapes. Sarutobi nodded as the boy went into the best detail he could, letting go when Naruto finished and putting a fist to his chin as he thought. "As far as I can tell, your Dojutsu seems to focus on humans, and registers something internal about them. It could be anything from their chakra levels to their life force to even their elemental affinity. I'll most likely have to do research when I find the time, but for now you should know that you have a brand new Kekkei Genkai. This kind has never existed before, and until we know more, I suggest you work on trying to control it and figuring out its mechanics. Right. Dismissed then. The group made their way out of the tower, Kakashi instantly disappearing on important business, and Sasuke leaving right afterward muttering about needing to train. Soon all that was left were Sakura, Naruto, and Haku. Naruto turned to Sakura, a hopeful tone in his voice. "Nay, Sakura-chan, now that we're back, ya wanna go on a date?" Sakura stuck her tongue out at him. "Blech, all I wanna do right now is go home and take a nice, long bath. I haven't had a good one since we left Wave Country." With that, she spared a rushed goodbye and ran home, leaving the other two behind. Naruto sighed heavily, his shoulders dropping. Mustering up the energy, he jumped back up and turned to Haku. "Okay then, Haku, wanna go get some ramen with me? I've been dying to have some ever since we got here." "If you wish, Naruto-sama." "All right then, let's go." He grabbed her hand, leading her through the streets of Konoha. When they reached Ichiraku's ramen stand, he plopped down onto a seat, Haku gracefully taking the one next to him. He banged his hand on the table, calling out to the kitchen. "Oi, Tsukiji-san, you've got customers." There was a rustling as a young woman pushed the hanging drape out of her face, her long brown hair flowing behind her. When she saw Naruto, a happy smile drew itself across her face. "Naruto-kun," she squealed, "you're back. It's been so long." "Ayame-ne-chan," he grinned. "Yup, just returned from my big mission." "How was it?" she asked. It was such a joy to serve Naruto. He was always such a bundle of energy whenever he stopped by, always crowing about being a ninja and how great their ramen was. She really couldn't see why the villagers hated him so much. There was nothing she could connect between him and the monster that almost destroyed their village. Her view shifted over to Haku, her smile widening. "And who's this?" "This is Haku. I met her on the mission and we're friends now." "How do you do, miss?" Haku bowed as best she could from her sitting position. "Oh, you don't have to be polite with me, honey. Just call me Ayame, like everyone else." "As you wish, Ayame-san." Ayame gained a perplexed look and leaned over to Naruto, using her tray as a barrier to keep them from being seen. "She always like this?" she asked conspiratorially. "At least she calls you San," he grumbled. "She calls me Sama." "Really?" Naruto just nodded as though it wasn't really a problem. Ayame would have to ask about that later. She never thought Naruto would be the type to be so domineering, but then again, you couldn't judge people at first glance, though he made it clear he found it annoying. "So, how was the mission, then?" "Oh, it was awesome. You see, he launched into his story, giving his order to Tsuki when he greeted the boy heartily when he came out front. As his meal was brought to him, he wound down and then tore into it without abandon. Looking to the side, he noticed Haku taking a tentative bite of hers. Her eyes widened in surprise as the taste rushed into her. Naruto smiled. "Good, ain't it?" "It's very delicious," she agreed. "Yup, ramen is definitely the king of all meals. I can't go long without having some in my stomach." Haku glanced at the two already empty bowls by the boy's side and the several that were waiting to be served over the counter. Yes, she could certainly see Naruto's love of ramen. "It's my first time having it." A clump of noodles slipped out of Naruto's gaping mouth. "What?" he asked sluggishly. "It's my first time having ramen. My village was small and did not have such a place, and Zabuza-san and I tended to avoid heavily populated places when we went rogue, so we rarely ate in any kind of restaurant." Naruto continued to stare at her. Never ate ramen before, never knew the bliss that was the mixture of noodle and broth. How could this be? It was blasphemous. Well, he would certainly cure her of her ramen malnourishment. He slammed a hand down on the counter. "Tsukiji-san, 2 more bowls of ramen. 1 spicy vegetable and 1 chicken." Naruto turned back to Haku, who was looking at him strangely. "I'm gonna show you just how great ramen is." He would teach her all that she needed to know and then some. It was his duty to bring her into the light. Naruto-sama, that isn't necessary. Haku, you're supposed to be my tool, right? Oddly, a squeal of delight was heard off to his left, but all he could see was Ayame staring at them with some sort of dreamy look in her eye. Huh, that was weird. Yes, Naruto-sama, and that means you have to listen to whatever I say, right? Another squeal. Really? Ayame-ne-chan was getting weirder by the minute. Yes, Naruto-sama. Then I order you to eat some more ramen. Haku looked as though she was going to say something, but instead opted to only sigh. She looked at her master and smiled in fond annoyance. As you wish. All right. He waited as 2 more bowls of steaming noodles was put in front of Haku, Chuki winking at him for managing to corrupt another innocent. With all the business from the boy, and probably the girl as well if things were going this way, he and Ayame would be set for life. As he headed back into the kitchen, Chuki kept an ear out as Naruto began his lecture. Now the proper eating of ramen is actually a quite difficult thing to master. You have to. RRRRR. The sky turned red as the two finished eating and made their way back to Naruto's apartment. Haku had to admit that Naruto did seem like an expert when it came to the subject of noodles, though she doubted she would ever love them or be as much a connoisseur as Naruto was. Then again she doubted anyone could beat the boy in that respect. 15 bowls and the boy was still going strong. She had barely managed 4. Naruto opened the door to his room, nervous about what was going to happen. He hadn't really thought about it before, but with nowhere else to go, Haku was going to be living with him, at least for a little while. Actually it would be for much longer than that, but Naruto had failed to realize the severity of Haku's devotion. Her ideas about her servitude to the lad would cause a great number of problems. Only time would bring them to light, though. Now, although he thought Haku was cool and definitely a good friend, she was still a girl. Except for Sakura, he'd never really had any interest in the opposite, but with the crashing realization that a rather pretty and older girl was going to be sleeping in the same room as him brought his nerves into a frayed state. He was just hitting puberty after all. No one could expect him not to react in at least some fashion. He laughed anxiously as the mess that was his room came into view. Normally it was a mess. Now it was biohazard site. With no one to clean it for nearly a month, dust had piled up on everything, causing his nose to itch significantly and his eyes to water. At least his garden was okay, positioned outside so that it could collect rain and sunlight. It's not much, but it's home. Haku looked around. She was used to the squalor. After killing her father and running from home, she had lived on the streets for years before Zabuza found her. And even after that they hadn't lived in the most luxurious of places. In fact, the nicest place they had hung their kunai had been Geitu's. Needless to say, the man's taste had nothing to do with his personality. She rolled up her sleeves. Right. Her new master obviously had a sedentary lifestyle unlike her former migratory one, so she had to adapt to it as well. If she wanted to make sure Naruto grew up healthily, she had to make sure that his environment was healthy. It was common sense. Naruto stopped her as Haku went to pick up some empty instant ramen cups. What are you doing? She blinked. Cleaning up. You don't have to do that. He flustered. As your tool, I must have a balanced repertoire of uses. Cleaning, while not a required one, would help with your growth. But, he had to think quickly. Haku constantly stated she was his tool, but he didn't think of her as one. He didn't want her to wait on him hand and foot. He wanted an equal, someone he could talk to. Already she was falling into the role of a subordinate, someone inferior. Naruto had been put through too many years of that to let anyone else feel that way. Inspiration flashed through him. Haku, I order that you take a shower. Haku blinked. Naruto-sama, you have to follow my orders. I'll do the cleaning. You go take a shower. You're probably tired after everything, so go take one. Haku tilted her head to one side as if contemplating something. She put the ramen cups down and nodded. As you wish, Naruto-sama. Naruto grinned. Bathrooms through there. He pointed at a door. Towels should be there as well, and I'll get a pair of clothes you can sleep in. He shooed her into the bathroom, smiling as she locked door behind her. Awesome. She listened to me. It was a great plan, and he had done something nice as well. After all, both Haku and Sakura were girls, and Sakura wanted a bath, so surely Haku would like a shower. It felt good doing something for someone else. He could get used to it. Then it struck him. Crap, I still ordered her to do it. Naruto groaned as he saw that he was only encouraging Haku's behavior. To get her to do things he didn't think she would do without an order, he'd had to do so. Damn it, this was going to be hard. He had to find a gentle balance between the two, order and freedom. He never thought having someone like Haku around would be so difficult. He glanced around, shrugged, and began to gather up the trash. It distracted him from the water running in the background and Haku's soft humming with it. He didn't think she'd be someone who'd sing in the shower. But the idea of Haku's. Naruto burst into a rack of coughing fits. Had to keep his mind from wandering like that. He wasn't a pervert, not like those adults who always passed out from a nosebleed because of his Warok no Jutsu. He was broken from his thoughts by Haku's voice. Naruto-sama, I am finished. Oh, how was the show? Wah 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 wah. A thin trail of red bled down to his lip. Haku, what are you doing? Haku her head, confused. What do you mean? Slapping a hand to cover his eyes, Naruto quickly spun around. Why are you? Haku looked down at herself. She was except for the towel she had flung across her shoulders. Water fell in tiny rivulets down her soft curves, glistening off her alabaster skin. A light blush on her cheeks was her only reaction. Is there something wrong? She didn't see what the problem was. Zabuza never seemed to care or even notice whenever she bathed or undressed. The man was more of a father figure than any sort of romantic partner. This was mostly due to the fact that the man had absolutely no from severe psychological scarring. Just put some clothes. Naruto wildly waved behind him, gesturing at the extra pair of pajamas he had put aside for her. Haku nodded and went over to wear them, inadvertently giving a luscious show of her pert backside, accented by her recently released raven hair. Naruto forced himself to think other thoughts as Haku continued her shameless acts. Being Hokage, ninjutsu, Sakura-chan. The image of the pink-haired genin popped into his mind. Then she started to flirtingly remove her top. Naruto immediately began to bang his head on the floor, a rather impressive action as his spine had to bend more than a normal person's could thanks to his sitting position. When he finally stopped, the image of a stripping Sakura had been erased from his mind, as well a good portion of his brain cells. Turning around, he saw that Haku was kneeling a few feet away from him. Luckily she was dressed this time. Her frame was a bit too big for his clothes, and so her stomach and the ends of her legs and arms were showing. Haku pulled down on the sleeves. She hadn't worn civilian nightwear for a long time, opting instead for her shinobi wear so she could ready to leave or react to danger at a moment's notice. Haku was a bit miffed at the way the shirt barely pushed against her chest. Due to years of malnutrition before Zabuza had rescued her and the harsh training after, her body had very little of the baby fat girls her age would normally have. Much of it was replaced by toned muscle, giving her body a very tight appearance. Mixed in with her loose clothing, it was one of the key factors for why she could disguise herself as a boy so easily. It had only been in the last year or so that her body had started to grow womanly charms, and that had been more or less slowed down by her training regimen and Spartan lifestyle. Even though she had relegated most of her time and effort to ninjutsu, she was still a girl at heart. Her small size was a constant reminder of her childlike body. One of the main aspects of a kunoichi was the ability to seduce enemies. Haku doubted anyone would succumb to her charms when her body looked like it had barely passed puberty. Initially, this wouldn't have been a problem since she always pretended to be a boy, but now, with Zabuza, it had been made clear that she'd never reveal her true gender. After all, being a female nuke nin was extremely dangerous given the wild and downright sadistic tendencies of many of Kurigakure's hunter nins. The warnings and tales Zabuza had told her made Haku shiver down to her very bone as she realized the all-too-scary truth of his words. But Naruto-sama obviously expected different of her. He expected her to act more like a normal girl than a tool. While Haku simply could not understand being anything other than a tool to be used, being more than a weapon would be easy enough. Obviously, being more like a normal girl meant having a more girlish appearance. She would have to strive to achieve that. Regardless of Haku's concerns, Naruto thought she was very cute. The girl's hair had again been pulled into a bun at the top of her head, covered by a white holder, a few strands falling down her face. There was a very innocent beauty to her. He neglected to think about the way she had almost killed him. Naruto gulped. This was a part he was dreading. The problem: only one bed. Now even though he was sure most of the boys in his ninja class would have killed for a chance like this, Naruto wouldn't. He knew Haku. He liked Haku. She was his friend. And so he was going to do the smart thing. He wasn't going to let Naruto Jr. make the decision for him. Especially about someone who could easily remove Naruto Jr. from the equation completely. The bed's ready for ya, Haku. She instantly saw the problem. But there is only one. Yeah, and you're the one who's gonna sleep there. But Naruto-sama, as your tool, no, you sleep. You sleep there. He pointed at the bed with an impassioned finger. There was no way in hell he was gonna let her sleep on the floor when there was a way she didn't have to. Haku said nothing. She simply bowed respectfully and slipped into the bed. Good night, Naruto-sama. Night, Haku. Naruto bit his lip as he watched her close her eyes. Crap, I ordered her again. Yeah, this was going to be a problem. RRRRR. A few days passed and Haku became gradually accustomed to life in Konoha. She still followed Naruto wherever the boy went and lacked the appropriate modesty for a girl her age, but for the most part Naruto couldn't find anything wrong with the relationship he was in with the girl. She was his friend and kept him company, and after the isolation he had gone through for many years, it was exactly what he needed. The nights were terrible though. Haku had two problems. One, she was grabby when she slept. So many times Naruto had woken up in the middle of the night to find himself engulfed by the girl, which was surprising since Naruto made damn sure he slept on the other side of the room so he wouldn't be the one to accidentally attempt such. He had initially freaked out, but with repeated occurrences had become used to it and learned to escape. This led to the second problem. Probably due to running away from hunter nins for so long, Haku instinctively threw senbons at any noise that was made around her. Naruto had almost been, and sometimes was, turned into a target dummy for her. She never hit his vitals, but damn those needles hurt. Other than that, everything was fine. However, the chaos that was slowly boiling from the nature of their bond would erupt sooner or later. And heaven have mercy on anyone who was caught in the result's proximity. When Naruto looked back on it all, he figured that it could have been a whole lot worse. And to be honest, the day's incidents were actually quite funny. The day had started a bit eventfully. A member of Anbu had arrived at Naruto's apartment, requesting their presence in front of the Hokage. When they arrived, Sarutobi immediately sprung several tests of practice and theory on Haku to analyze her aptitude and style. The girl had done very well in most of the tests. Sarutobi had found the way she had lodged half a dozen senbon in the crotch of her male combat examiner harsh and unorthodox, but ultimately effective. Haku scored perfectly on her anatomy scores as expected, and everyone was both quite pleased and a bit disturbed by her intimacy with the insides of the human body. And her Kekai Genkai was a treat to behold as the ninja created a miniature statue of the Hokage out of ice. In the end, she was bestowed the rank of Special Junin and delegated 2 jobs: bodyguard to Naruto, which Haku had planned on doing anyway, and a relief medic nin for the hospital. Sarutobi had handed off a couple of basic medical jutsu scrolls to the girl, saying that their use would be twofold. He didn't have to explain further. On Naruto's new Kekai Genkai, he didn't have anything new to say. It was still too early to determine exactly what the Dojutsu's power were, and required a few more days of research before he could. Naruto had let him off the hook with that, being surprisingly patient. Sarutobi had given Haku a slight advance on her salary, so Naruto decided to get some new equipment and supplies for Haku. Seeing as the girl only owned a few pair of clothing and had been increasingly leeching off his, Naruto thought that it would be good for her to get some new clothes. It would be a pleasant outing, and Haku could further integrate herself into Konoha's society as a normal person instead of a runaway shinobi. It was supposed to be nice. It was supposed to be fun. It wasn't supposed to end up creating an urban legend. Never underestimate the cunningness and tenacity of a devoted girl. The two had made their way to one of the many clothing stores in Konoha, one that specialized in ninja outfits and the like. With a ring from the door chime, the two entered. The saleswoman smiled as she saw a young woman wearing rather tomboyish clothes enter the shop. Then her smile decidedly lost its warmth and plummeted into a cold snarl. The demon was with her. Naruto forced a calm expression on his face as he made his way to the counter. He already recognized the warning signs of a biased villager and could immediately envision the verbal abuse the lady would heap on him. But he had to keep a steady hand and not retaliate in any way. He wasn't dealing with just himself now, he had to think of Haku as well. If it weren't for this train of thought he probably would have just turned around and left at first glance. However, things were bound to go downhill anyway. Before he could say anything, the woman interrupted with a biting put-down. "We don't serve your kind here." Naruto pushed down the image of him trashing the damn place and plastered a fake smile on his face. "We'd like to buy some clothes, please." The polite tone made him want to puke. "Didn't you hear me? I won't serve you. But I'm not the one who needs clothes. It's her." He gestured at Haku, who watching the interaction with a subtle purse to her lips. The saleswoman looked Haku over with a critical eye. "And is she acquainted with you?" Sort of. "Then I won't sell to her." "Why?" She let out a nasty smirk, glad to see that she was creating some sort of turmoil in the Jinchuriki. He deserved whatever abuse anyone could and should deal out. "Because I don't want people to think I peddle my wares to ones who deal with demons." Naruto bit back his scathing reply. "No, keep it down. Keep it together." He ground his teeth together, his eyes narrowing. "What do I have to do so that you'll sell her what she needs?" "Leave my store. Just you." "Fine. If that what was all she wanted, then he would gladly do it." He was sure Haku could peruse the store and find what she needed all by herself. At least he wouldn't have to deal with that ignorant bitch anymore. He turned around to go but was called back by the woman. What it is?" Naruto growled. His quick temper was already cracking through his self-imposed calmness. If he didn't keep a stern hold on it he would go ahead and trash the place and damn the consequences. "Say, I'm a demon." Naruto's blood went from boiling hot to freezing cold. "What?" he asked in a small, quiet voice. The woman let out a cruel smile, accentuated by her cutting tone. "Before you leave, I want you to tell me you're a demon." It's part of the deal. Take it or leave it. That's it. Come on. We're going to another store, Haku. Naruto grabbed the girl by the hand and attempted to pull her out of the store. It's just going to be the same everywhere else you go, the woman crooned. Oh, she was so enjoying this. Naruto and Haku turned around. She continued to smirk. You know it's the truth. And you know I'm the one with the best offer. Oh, and it won't matter if your little friend comes by herself next time. By this time tomorrow, the whole district should know all about her. Naruto came up short. His mind raced. It was always like this as far back as he could remember. The insults, the ostracizing behavior, the beatings, even the few assassination attempts. He remembered that fear, that despair. And it wouldn't stop coming back, even now. All he had to say was a few words. Just a few meaningless words. He's never been the demon you see him as. He's a proud member of Konoha. He's Naruto Uzumaki. They were just words. I'm Ada. That's enough, Naruto-sama. Haku gently placed a hand against his chest, stopping him from finishing the sentence. She turned to the woman, her face revealing nothing. But her body language was screaming warnings to any who could perceive them. You will sell us the clothes. Wah, you will sell us the clothes. Haku repeated. The woman snorted. And why should I? Naruto could barely see Haku's hand move, and the woman, without any kind of training, didn't see anything at all. But she could feel the point of something lightly press up against the soft flesh between her throat and jaw. Looking down in shock, she saw Haku had a senbon pressed just against her skin. Haku's face matched her actions, cold aggression. We are customers, so you will sell us what we want. What are you doing? The woman exclaimed fearfully. She tried to back away, but Haku had positioned herself so that the counter was at the woman's back. I'll have the police on you for attempted assault. No, you won't. Haku pressed the senbon a little more, drawing a bit of blood. This prevented the woman from trying to frantically retort. I have been assigned by the Hokage himself to be Naruto-sama's bodyguard. But even if he didn't, I would have done so anyway. Naruto-sama is my master, and I will not allow any harm to befall of him, physical or mental. The air grew colder for a minute. And certainly not from your pettiness. Now, you will sell to us. The woman blubbered in agreement. Haku nodded and removed the throwing weapon. Then she went to check the rows of ninja clothing, keeping a careful eye on the saleswoman to make sure she didn't try anything funny. Time passed and Haku finally found all she was looking for, including several outfits of both civilian and shinobi attire. Naruto noted that Haku preferred traditional clothing when it came to the normal ones, a few kimonos and yukatas. Her shinobi clothing was similar to her old ones, shortened gis on top of slightly baggy pants and shirts, colored a mixture of black, white, and blue. She also bought a few unmarked masks, a connection to her older life, as well as a few other miscellaneous apparel that would prove helpful. They gathered it all up and went to pay for it, the woman ringing up the purchase. With a scowl, she tallied the final number. 100,000 ryu. 100,000 ryu, Naruto shouted. That's ludicrous. The woman wasn't even trying to be subtle with her prejudice and sore attitude. It's what you'll pay. Don't expect me to just. She was cut off when Haku's hands disappeared again, senbon outlining the woman's neck as they just missed her and punctured the wall. She looked up with tearful eyes as Haku glared back. We will pay the normal price. But we will pay the normal price. All right. The woman rang up another number, one that was much fairer than before. The two paid and left the store with their merchandise, allowing the woman to collapse to her knees and break down into a shivering and sobbing mess. Naruto looked at Haku with awe and a little fear. You didn't have to do all that, Haku. I said I would be yours, Naruto-sama, to do as you wish. Keeping those that wish you ill from doing so is a given. I guess. He looked off to the side with a troubled expression, causing Haku to become a bit worried. She had gone a bit overboard in there, but she felt it had been necessary. Still, what made the woman so adamant about Naruto? And what was this talk of demons? She did not understand. Her concerns were waylaid when Naruto looked back with a nasty grin on his face. That was awesome what you did, though. I thought that hag'd pee her pants. Haku smiled. Indeed. The rest of the day continued like that, Haku threatening shop owners when they refused service simply because Naruto was with her. The worst incident, or perhaps best if you were watching from Naruto's point of view, was at one of the weapon stores. When Haku had begun her threats, the shopkeeper, a retired ninja, had retaliated with a kodachi to put the girl in her place. He was shocked and then horrified when Haku froze the sword's metal and then broke it into 1,000 pieces with her Kekai Genkai. The girl had been labeled the Ice Demon of Konoha after that, thanks to both her association with Naruto and her Hyouten abilities. Sarutobi had to answer to a bunch of angry villagers because of it, but he felt it was worth the headache if someone could openly support Naruto now. He had tried to when Naruto was just a young child, but to side with the town pariah had brought the council and Danzo on his head. The fools could hardly do anything significant to him, but it wasn't worth the chance of even the smallest political civil war, especially shortly after the Kyuubi had raised Konoha. They had just come to an albeit shaky truce with Rock Country, and any weakness could have been exploited to catastrophic consequences. The last stop for them was the Yamanaka's flower shop. The shop owner, Inoichi, held the same sentiments as the rest of the village did for Naruto, but he also had a grudging respect for the blonde's green thumb. Even if he could hate the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, he could never hate another plant lover. Thus, it was one of the few places Naruto could go without being instantly run out or exorbitantly overcharged, though there was still an underlying level of tension there. When Naruto walked in, the first person he saw was Ino working on a bouquet of flowers. The young girl worked there whenever she didn't have training or missions as she found the surrounding plant life calming. As the two had often come across each other when Naruto was either buying new plants or looking for botanical advice, the two had formed a somewhat friendly banter between each other. Naruto still thought Ino was a Sasuke tard, and Ino thought Naruto was just an idiot, but the two got along better than most would have thought. Hey, Ino. The ponytailed blonde turned to Naruto and flashed him a tight smile. Hey, Naruto-kun. She placed the bouquet down and walked over to him. What are you here for? I was wondering if that fern I ordered from Rice Country came in yet. Just wait a minute. I think Daddy put it over here somewhere. As the girl rummaged through the pile of unopened boxes, she made small talk. So how are things at Team 7? Has Sasuke-kun asked about me at all? Nope. His frank answer pissed her off a bit. He could have at least mentioned something about Sasuke. She decided to have some revenge. You should probably give up on Sakura, ya know. Even Forehead isn't desperate enough to go out with the likes of you when such specimens of male perfection like Sasuke-kun are around. Ino placed a finger to her mouth. Though, if you two got together she'd stop bothering my Sasuke-kun. She'd never admit, but Ino missed her friendship with the Rosette. Naruto scowled. I'll turn Sakura-chan over to me. Just you wait and see. He smirked and waved his hand flippantly. Besides, you have just about as much chance as getting Sasuke-tem. He ignores so many of the girls, probably gay. Don't say bad things about Sasuke-kun. Ino shrieked, bashing Naruto over the head with the box she had in her hands. Haku flinched, and Naruto had to stop her from retaliating. Ino noticed the looks traveling between the two and realized she had never seen the girl before. Who's this? This is Haku, he responded. She met our team in Wave Country and wanted to come with us. So she lives here now. Ino noticed how close the two were standing together and how Haku was watching almost protectively over the boy. Add to that the fact that she seemed older and, Ino looked suspiciously at Naruto. I thought you said you were still chasing Sakura. What are you and her? Huh? Naruto looked between the two. He laughed. It's not like that. Haku is my tool. Ino blanched. What was that? I am Naruto-sama's tool. Ino glared at Naruto. What the hell kinda kinky stuff have you been doing? No, it's not like that. Then what is it? It's, arg. Naruto pulled at his hair. Why did things always have to turn out like this? It was just as bad at not having enough attention paid to him. Hell, it was even worse. He couldn't just run away from this situation. It's not like that, okay. It's complicated. Ino pouted. She couldn't just let him off the hook so easily and without a fight, but today was the day she was supposed to check on the special, ninja, plants her father had been experimenting with. She couldn't waste time. Though the point of creating plants that could do the stuff he described didn't particularly make a lot of sense or seem practical. Petals that could hinge into differently colored petals. What use could that possibly have? She glanced a quick casing of Haku. The girl was beautiful in an unearthly way. Definitely something that would attract Sasuke's own beauty. But still, Ino cheered silently at the comparison between their chests. Yup. She was still Konoha's self-proclaimed kunoichi. Fine, she muttered. I'll let you go for now, but I want full details when you come again. I don't have a choice in the matter, do I? Naruto had learned from an early age not to argue with Ino. She would bitch and cry and complain until your ears bled. It was only after the first dozen times, and he only lasted that long because of his own ungodly stubbornness, that he just resigned to his fate and followed her demands. Ino smiled brilliantly. Here's your order. She slid the box she had just smacked Naruto with across the counter. Naruto frowned. You're kidding, right? I'm sorry. What? He sighed. Thank you very much. Very good. She cooed mockingly. See ya, Naruto. Goodbye, Haku-san. I'll tell Choji and Shikamaru that you said hi. The two gave their partings and left, heading back to Naruto's apartment. Several more days passed, and the two became more used to each other's company. Haku had been forced by Naruto to be more careful and reserved when it came to her body. The boy could hardly take it at times when the girl walked around his apartment with barely a stitch of clothing. Or when she asked him if he preferred bigger and a shapelier figure in a completely clinical tone. How the hell was he supposed to answer that? Besides that, things had fallen into a lull. Until Naruto was summoned by the Hokage. Naruto was busy watering his plants as Haku pored over the medical jutsus she had been given. Until she could efficiently perform at least half of them, Sarutobi wouldn't let her begin her work at the hospital. No work meant no money, and no money meant it was harder for Naruto-sama. The solution was simple. The doorbell rang, and Haku answered it, allowing Naruto to continue tending to his garden. The person on the other side of the door was another Anbu member, this one with a cat mask. Haku greeted him politely. How do you do, Anbu-san? What can I do for you? Is Naruto Uzumaki here? Who is it, Haku? Naruto looked around the corner, his eyes widening. Anbu, what do you want? The Hokage wishes to speak with you. I have come to be your escort. What about Sarutobi Jii-san? He may have found out about the nature of your Kekai Genkai.